Becky Turner, real estate agent, and I'm one of the team members of the Investry here with Yochanan. We're going to talk about Airbnbs today. Well, let me ask you, how many Airbnbs do you got?
I have a couple of AirBNBs. I have in my own property, my primary residence, and then I have another one that I converted into an Airbnb. So I bought a rental property and I furnished it and renovated it, and now it's a BNB, and it's kind of awesome.
So, what made you get into the Airbnb business?
I think that what got me into the BNB is pretty much the cash flow. I figured that I want to try something that cash flows a bit more. So that's for me as a person. For me as a business entity, I wanted to get into this to understand how does it work. And every time before I market something to anybody else, I'm going to try it on my own. So if I lose something, it's me. We found out that it's kind of awesome, and now we're doing it for others too.
What kind of research did you have to do to get an Airbnb? Like, did you have to look at restrictions? Did you have to look at HOAs? Anything like that? There
are two main things that you want to do prior to getting any Airbnb. The first thing is to make sure that you can do it. So you want to look at a CCNR of your HOA if there is one, and typically don't do Airbnbs with HOA. You want to make sure that the city allows you to do it. Some cities do not allow it. Some cities require some type of a permit. You want to be compliant. You don't want to test the waters with it, because if somebody shuts your operation down, it's a loss of just a lot of money. And the other thing you want to do is to understand the location really, really well. Why are you getting a property here? Is this going to work well for your future guests? Are you going to have enough demand? With Airbnb, location is everything. It's true in real estate too, but especially in Airbnb.
How do you advertise? How do you get yourself out there? How can people say, hey, I want to stay in this Airbnb?
I think it's a lot easier than maybe somebody would perceive. Just put it on Airbnb. You can do it also with VRBO and some other platforms. And then you need to be a really good host, and the platform will help you get there. So what I've done is basically took great photos, designed it really well, obviously, put a listing, and started to get guests. At first, you take shorter stays because you want to have more volume of stays, and you're taking a bit lower price because you want to get these reviews in. And later you can balance your prices out.
Was the experience of hosting what you expected it to be?
I think it's a bit better than what I had expected. We had a good experience. We only had a couple of towels lost. We only had a couple of chairs broken, but nothing major in the past couple of years that we've been doing it.
Anything you would change? You're looking back and was like, you know what? I should have not done this. I should have changed this up. Is there anything different you would do as an Airbnb host?
That's a great question. And I would say that the changes are pretty much the lessons that we've learned along the way. One of the lessons that we've implemented is that you need to check in with the guests. So not only do you give them instructions upon moving, a day after you want to reach out and ask them, how are you doing? Is there anything I should know about? We are reaching out to the guests immediately upon check-in, and then we'll reach out again during the stay, making sure that they are happy. At the end, the guests are your clients. They're going to leave you a review. Great reviews are going to attract more clients. You want to be very, very service-oriented, and you want to make sure they have a great stay.
So if an amenity broke, say the HVAC broke, or maybe the washer and dryer broke, and a client reaches out to you at 2 a.m. Are you available, or are you just I'll deal with it tomorrow when I wake up?
That's one of the things that you really need to be on point with clients that for short-term stay, they're only here for a couple of days. You can't let them have a bad experience, so you need to be on top of it. If somebody calls me, and I had an occasion not in 2 a.m., but I had one in 12 a.m., and I got into my car and I drove and I dealt with it. But that's why we also have an operation and a systemized approach. So it's not just the person, it can be somebody else from within the team. So if you are a host and you're not doing it on your own, make sure you have a strong team that are on call and that can deal with those type of situations.
And then what about cleaning? Is cleaning done in between each guest? Is that set and automated?
Yes, you do the cleaning every time somebody leaves. You need to make sure that it's well kept. You don't want the next guest to pay for somebody else's mistakes, obviously.
So how much income do you make a month? And let's talk about the vacancy rates.
Income-wise, we're making about $4,000 for one of them and about $2,000 from the other one. If you remove utilities and taxes and stuff, you get a bit less. And the vacancy rate, so we keep low vacancy rate. I think our vacancy rate is averaging about 15% because we have several months with 100% occupancy. Sometimes I think the worst we've ever had was something like 60%. So we're trying to keep it well occupied. You need to price it well. The way that I look at this, I look at the Airbnb platform And if I was the guest that I'm trying to hook, would I click on my BNB? You need to be very truthful to yourself, and you need to look at these numbers and say, this is clickable. And if it's not, you need to reduce your prices or just select another BNB from the get-go.
So what type of investors should get an Airbnb?
I would say what type of investors shouldn't get into Airbnb, and the type of investor who is afraid of volatility, that wants everything to be scientific and everything clockwork, don't get into Airbnb. There is too much volatility with it. It's more dynamic compared to long-term rental. The type of investor that should consider getting into an Airbnb, a type of investor that has a very, very strong team, because you can't do it without a good team, or maybe if you yourself is the team, that's fine too. Somebody who is very into, if you're managing yourself, very service-oriented. It is crucial to be service-oriented. You need to be like a people person, or at least to have the facade of a people person.
What if damage occurs during the guest stay?
There is an insurance policy in place by Airbnb, and you're supposed to be insured if a guest is causing damages to your property. So if something like that happened, you file a claim with them. It's not with your own insurance company, typically speaking. You need to be attentive to it. There is a difference between a guest who is destroying your property and you need to deal with it, and just an HVAC going wild and you need to service it immediately in order to have a good stay with the client. Needless to say, the insurance by Airbnb is for guests' damages, not for your property insurance.
What advice would you give to a person who's wanting to start their own Airbnb?
I would say number one advice, understand your location and then understand the type of property that you want to get. It varies between areas. What's true to Austin doesn't necessarily hold in Denver. So make sure you understand, make sure you know what to get, and make sure that it is on a high demand. Another advice would be put a lot of thought and effort into the design. Make your product stand out. If you just do it in Airbnb for another property like everybody else, it's going to be harder. Another advice would be get something small. Don't go into big properties. They typically don't BNB as well.
So what would be the difference between an Airbnb and say like a long-term rental?
With long-term rentals, especially in our region, it's kind of a set and forget sometime. You put the people there, they live there, and if something comes up, they give you a call. With Airbnb, you need to be on top of it all. So you have larger costs of acquisition, larger costs of renovation and furnishing, but then you have better cash flow if you play your cards well. Anything you want to mention?
Yeah, so if people are in the future wanting to do the Airbnbs, like could you help them manage? Could you help guide them on the process and teach them how to be successful with their Airbnbs?
Yeah, we can do that if we see that it's the best fit for you and we think it's going to achieve your strategic goals. Yeah, by all means, that's what we do. We can help with acquiring the property, converting the property, furnishing the property, and maintaining it throughout. We can do everything in-house. That's a part of the value proposition of an end-to-end service like what we have in the company.
Could you also help them with forming a budget to start an Airbnb?
Yeah.
Including the renos, the decoration?
Definitely, it's not even high. It's very important part of the process. Before anybody gets into real estate, they really need to understand all the budgetary restrictions. They need to understand how it's going to cash flow. They need to understand all these type of things. This is something that we do in-house regardless. I don't want anybody to get into something and later discover things that they weren't aware of. So the first thing we're going to do, and that's what I mentioned when I said, making sure there is a good fit, is to understand how much it's going to cost, how much it's going to produce. Is it the right fit for me? Is it the right area for me? And yada, 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 making sure that people are fine with it. This is a part of the service.